President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris will reportedly visit the border amid the crisis at some point. Nothing specific yet as they scramble to get control of the biggest immigration surge we've had there in over 20 years. Harris has now been put in charge of resolving that. Is she up to the job? Joining us now to talk more about this is Texas Congressman Pat Fallon. Congressman, nice to have you back on the show this morning. Good to see you.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm doing well. We've got a whole lot to talk about in your home state here, the state that has the biggest border with Mexico. The Biden administration yesterday saying that Kamala Harris will now be in charge of running the immigration task force. I want to play you a soundbite from that, then get some reaction.
We're going to be dealing with a full team now that we have to be able to deal with the problem here at home, but also to deal with it now in terms of in country. And I can think of nobody who's better qualified to do this than this is a woman who ran the second largest Attorney General's office in America after the United States Attorney General in the state of California, and has done a great deal upholding human rights, but also fighting organized crime in the process. So it's not her full responsibility and job, but she's leading the effort.
Kamala Harris has this device she uses, Congressman. She kind of laughs when she's uncomfortable. She's done it several times. She laughed the other day when she was asked about visiting the border. Do you think she's the right person to handle this task?
I mean, no. I mean, Kamala Harris is coming to Texas.
Right.
The border crisis is over. So first and foremost, Rob, this is the Biden border crisis. For 4 years, President Trump turned a flood into a trickle because he had sound policies. The migrant protection protocols, where if you were caught coming over, you waited in Mexico when your claim was adjudicated. Now Biden has reinstituted an Obama-era policy of catch and release. If someone is caught crossing the border, they get a summons to appear, and they are released into the country. That is ridiculous, and it's not commonsensical by any measure. But let's also be clear that actions have consequences. When you're in, the first day you're in office and you sign an executive order, several executive orders, and you tell folks you're going to make it easier to get welfare, you're going to freeze deportations, you're going to halt construction on the border wall, you're going to discontinue President Trump's policy of expeditiously expediting the dangerous criminals, and you're going to deport them. You're acting as a magnet, and it's not a surprise that hundreds of thousands of people have rushed to the border, including unaccompanied minors. So this is clearly the Biden border crisis.
Is it as simple as that, by the way? If you watch some of the other networks, they're saying that the administration is being transparent, and this is based on bad Trump policies. But I can't emphasize this enough, and it's not revisionist history, but there's some gaslighting going on. To be clear, this crisis did not exist on January 20th. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, so let me just share with you some figures. I mean, this is startling, and this proves that the mainstream media is just providing cover to the Biden administration. In February of 2020, there were 36,686 people apprehended at the border. The next year, the full month that Biden was in office, in February of 21, it was 100,441. That's a 273% increase. The only thing that changed was on January 20th, there was a new occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And then if you look at unaccompanied minors, which is very dangerous, and it's an absolute human tragedy. In February of 2020, there were 3,070 apprehended at the border. And in February 21, there was 9,457.
Wow.
That's a 308% increase. And then oddly enough, arrests on the border, drugs, smuggling, that kind of thing. In January 21, it was 5,119. And then in February of 21, it was 1,470. That's startling. So we know that basically illegal border crossings have tripled, and yet there's a 62% decrease with arrests. That doesn't jive. And that's just bad policy.
I think I do want to ask you about one more thing before we run out of time. But I think it's interesting. This could actually affect the midterm elections, and we're still 20 months out. But it's not like there's some magic bullet solution that Kamala Harris is going to come up with here. This is going to go on and on and on. Congressman, I do want to ask you about something that I know you're passionate about, and I think a lot of Americans don't really know a lot about. It's something called retrocession. Basically, the Democrats want to make Washington, D.C. our 51st state, giving us a new Democratic congressman and 2 new Democratic senators. That's exactly what would happen. But retrocession is something different. That would give the 700,000 people that live in the D.C. metro votes in both the House and Senate. Tell us about it.
Yeah, that's a great, it's a great idea because it addresses and allays all of their concerns. So we had a hearing on this on the Oversight Committee. The Democrats want to make Washington, D.C. a state because it is an absolute layup and guarantees them 1 additional seat in the House and 2 in the Senate. And they deny that. But listen, just look at the last 3 presidential cycles. The Democratic candidate averages about 93%, and the Republican candidate in D.C. gets 5%. So that will be a Democratic seat forever. And what retrocession does is it says where most people of the 700,000 D.C. residents live, we simply give that back to Maryland. The other side of D.C., that happened, I believe, it was in the 1840s, right, where Virginia retook the portion that they had given up for D.C. And that would solve the issue of 700,000 people, no taxation without representation. But one thing I did want to mention, that my Democratic colleagues at the hearing all made this racial. They said, well, there was a lot of movement and momentum for D.C. statehood until there was a black majority. And that's just simply not true, because we looked up the census data, and from 1800 to almost 1960, there was a white majority in D.C. So for nearly 160 years, D.C. D.C. remained a federal city, and there was no momentum. So it had nothing to do with any racial makeup of the city whatsoever. It was another false flag.
And Congressman, you've made the point many times before. I think people sort of tune out when they hear, oh, D.C. becoming a state, Puerto Rico becoming a state. The Democrats, this could actually happen, but here's the thing. It's unconstitutional. You read the Constitution, D.C. was never meant to be a state. The founders make that very clear. Congressman, always enjoy having you on. Good to see you. That's Congressman Pat Fallon joining us again.
Thanks, sir. Take care. God bless.
You too. Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.